History Inside a Nutshell, the show where we sail into our port of call discussing maritime history.
The RMS Titanic is the most iconic ship in history. Everyone knows her story, largely thanks to the iconic 1997 movie by James Cameron. The Titanic is also discussed on social media and in the news, especially when it came to the Titanic's memorabilia. Upon the ship's discovery in 1985, more than 5,000 items were either recovered from the wreck or within the debris field. Around half were kept by relatives or were passed down through close connections. When it comes to auctioning memorabilia, this issue is debatable. Some survivors, enthusiasts, and even Dr. Robert Belland argue that items from the Titanic or kept by Titanic relatives should be left alone out of respect. Some auctioneers disagree. Occasionally, auction houses worldwide would sell Titanic memorabilia for hefty prices. One example of this is Wallace Hartley's violin that broke the world record for being sold for £1.1 million or $1.3 million. However, some of the items have stories that are overlooked. While some items aren't as exciting as Hartley's violin or the fictional Heart of the Ocean from the movie, they have fascinating stories. Here are the 6 items that have a connection to the Titanic. Beaver fur coat. In 2017, a beaver fur coat went under the hammer at the estimated price of $250,000. It was sold to an anonymous bidder in the UK. The coat went on display at the Titanic Museum in Pigeon Forge after the family of first-class stewardess Mabel Bennett sold it in 1999. Mabel Bennett had worked with the White Star Line as a first-class stewardess. After working on the Olympic, Bennett signed on to Titanic on 6 April 1912. Also joining her were Bennett's brother-in-law Alfred Crawford and her nephew Leonard Hoare. When the Titanic was sinking, Bennett was in the nightdress and realizing how cold the weather was, she ran back into her room and grabbed the coat to keep her warm. She survived the disaster and was placed in lifeboat number 5. Sadly, Leonard didn't survive, but Alfred did. A bejeweled bracelet. In 1987, a leather bag was discovered and had been raised from the seabed. Later on, the leather bag was opened on live international television recorded in Paris. The bag revealed American paper money and beautiful 15-carat rose gold band with silver overlay, and the name Amy encrusted with diamonds. The bracelet had featured in a documentary called Titanic: Secrets Revealed. It became the most expensive memorabilia to be sold, with an anonymous buyer that bought the bracelet at an online auction for $200 million. It isn't known who the bracelet belonged to, but the owner believes it belonged to third-class passenger Amy Stanley. Stanley was emigrating to Connecticut to start work as a lady's maid. She shared her cabin with a child and a nurse. On the night of the disaster, she had written a postcard in bed when she noticed the ship had stopped. She asked the steward if something was wrong, but in response he told all the women who had been asking the same question to go back to bed. Stanley managed to escape into collapsible lifeboat C and survived. She never managed to see her bracelet again, as it was left in the care of the purser who safekept passengers' valuables. Captain Smith's cigar box. One of the rarest finds of the Titanic is Captain Smith's box. It was believed that Captain Smith would have smoked on board. The box was designed to hold 40 Havana cigars, and it was made out of camphor wood, engraved with the captain's initials. It isn't touched on inside the officers' quarters. There was an officers' smoke room that was on the starboard side. It was where the captain and the officers would take their cigar or cigarette break in between their shifts. Of course, this was before the time when smoking was healthy, unlike today. In 2011, the box was auctioned in Liverpool and sold for $40,000. Edwardian perfume bottles. When he recollected the memory of these recoveries from the wreck, Bill Sauder said, "For those few minutes the ship was alive again." In 2000, the Mir 1 submersible discovered a bag in the debris field. Upon its recovery, drivers of RMS Titanic Inc. saw around 65 vials of essential oils with paper labels that were still readable. While some bottles were broken, the oils had retained their fragrances. Each bottle contained the smells of orange blossom, lavender, roses and lily of the valley. The perfumes had been produced by the pharmacist Adolf Salveld. Boarding the ship as a first-class passenger, Salveld brought his perfume bottles with him, hoping he would open a fragrance shop and sell the perfumes on the American market. On the night of the disaster, Salveld was in the smoking room and sighted the iceberg. He left the samples in his cabin. Salveld survived the disaster, but he would have nightmares of the Titanic and that affected his sleeping pattern. He died in 1926. Following the recovery, the Salveld bottles were on display at the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester, the UK in 2004 and the Franklin Institute in 2012. In 2011, the bottles were put on auction by Guernsey's Auctions House in New York. Their value was $189 million. Lifeboat biscuit. A surprising item that survived the night intact was a Spillers and Baker's Pilot cracker. In 2015, the cracker that came from a survival kit on one of the lifeboats was sold for $23,200 to a collector from Greece. Lowe's whistle. There have been many heroes of the Titanic disaster, but some have gone unrecognised. One of those heroes was 5th Officer Harold Lowe. After the iceberg collision, Lowe woke up to voices outside his cabin. When he opened the door, Lowe saw passengers wearing life belts outside. Quickly, Lowe began to monitor and assist women and children into lifeboat number 5. During the lowering of the lifeboat, Lowe had been interrupted by Bruce Ismay. Ismay complained about the lifeboats not being filled to their full capacity. Of course, this compliment was thrown at another officer. When Ismay ran toward lifeboat number 5, Lowe saw that Ismay was grabbing the falls, crying, "Lower away," repeatedly. Annoyed, Lowe snapped, saying to Ismay, "If you get the hell out of the way, we'll be able to do something. Do you want me to lower it faster? You'll have me drown the lot of them." Lowe was ordered to take command of lifeboat number 14. After the Titanic sank, Lowe ordered passengers in lifeboat number 14 and 4 other lifeboats to return to the scene where the ship went down. Although he was too late, Lowe managed to save 4 people from the freezing water. It is believed that Lowe used his officer's whistle to organise the passengers into lifeboats. In 2020, the UK auction house Henry Aldridge and Son put the whistle up for auction. It was sold for $166,000. While there are more stories waiting to be told, there will always be a rift between people who are in favour of selling memorabilia and people who aren't in favour. Everyone's opinion is different, but you cannot hide from the truth of the fascination behind each item. They are important in the Titanic story, retelling the events of life, tragedy and death, and memory through the eyes of the survivors and their family. They also remind others about the horror passengers and crew had to face or suffer on the cold April night in the North Atlantic Ocean. Today the wreck is eaten by bacteria, and it's likely to disappear within our lifetime for salvagers. It meant the race is still on to retrieve artifacts from the Titanic, like the Marconi wireless telegraph from the Marconi room. But whether more items are found or would be lost forever, the story of the Titanic won't be forgotten.
A massive big thank you to my friend Robin for narrating today's video. If you would like to follow Robin on Instagram, I will leave a link in the description box down below. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe for future videos. Until next time, this has been History Inside a Nutshell, departing from the dogs. Thank you so much for all of your support and enjoy the rest of your voyage.